This is what Microsoft has given me. And, I am proud of it. When I was a kid, why not? Why aren't we doing the hottest new thing? And after you've been around this long enough, you understand that the stable platforms you've worked on, if you've had the luxury of working on a very stable project, that makes money. And that means you have a job. What's happening? Do I need to grab on? Is this the thing that I need to grab onto because the other thing, maybe I won't have a job? And we fear that a lot as developers. If you're fearing that as a younger person, don't think that's uncommon. That's normal, even when you're older.
All right, welcome to another coffee chat. I am your host, VJ Menon, and today I have Chris Gomez, a Microsoft MVP and a .NET specialist. Hey Chris, how are you?
Hi, VJ. This is great. It's great to be a part of this, and thanks for having me.
Awesome. Essentially, like the idea here is that everybody started out somewhere,
Right.
10 years ago, 20 years ago. A lot of us are more of the experienced senior devs, in our field. I've already given my story a couple times on YouTube and all different places. So I think people know about me. But I'm really interested in hearing now, like from, a lot of the people that have been in the group, especially yourself, about how you started out and really like what life was at the beginning and then how that transitioned to where you are now. Because a lot of people today who are entering the market, as you said, are finding it is difficult. And that said, I think that a lot of people forget or people don't know that the market was difficult even at our time too.
Sure.
But we were doing things then that helped us platform a bit. And I feel like those platforming ideas, those little brainwaves that we had, like you said, you worked for your friend in a business at Orange County. You learned a little bit about impact printing and checks and balancing and all that stuff. And that's where
Yeah.
you cut your chops. I feel like people need to hear that.
Yeah.
And also like what you learned, along the way at Cal Poly. And then even there's some other things I wanted to ask you
Okay.
about,
Sure.
like into 2025, is for sure. Um, when I look at .NET jobs, a lot first when I hear about .NET jobs, I kind of think, oh, .NET is that kind of like an older technology that people should be paying attention to. But when I look them up, they're still high paying. So maybe let's start first with, again, kind of like the beginning parts. Like,
Yeah.
what led you? What were you doing in college, and what led you to wanting to study, Microsoft technology, C Sharp, .NET, and all that stuff?
Yeah. So it's probably a little bit of a product of when I grew up, and the fact of, well, look, my dad. I got to give him a ton of credit. My dad was not in software. He's an IBMer, which is a phrase that younger people don't even know what that means.
Yeah,
But
that's true.
in that day, we're talking the mid '80s. Being an IBMer was a big deal. They wore suits. They were famous for the blue ties and blue shirts, and they would drive to the customer where the mainframe was to fix it personally. It wasn't like things today have changed so much. So he was one of those hardware engineers, literally going to work on Series 1s and AS400s, which I'm not asking the audience to know what those are, but there might be a
Mhm.
few people nodding a little bit. And he might be there at 4 a.m. because they were going to do what we would think of this as like an operating system update. Well, back then you couldn't just do it in the middle of the day. So a
Right.
big customer, an insurer or something, they might demand that this was done at 4 a.m. And you only had an hour window to do it because at 5 a.m. they went back online. So he would be there to
Wow.
support it. Now,
Yeah,
what does that
very
have to do
stressful.
with programming? That was when the
Right.
IBM PC came out. The one that it's I think it's called the 5150, but I never remembered that name. But it's this classic PC XT look. The employees would get a discount on it, although even then in today's dollars, what he spent on it was probably pretty crazy. So this is the age of Commodore 64s, Apple IIs, and the IBM PC. I was the weird kid whose dad brought home an IBM PC. A lot of my other friends were getting Commodore 64s and Apples and stuff. It was a time when you really couldn't do a whole lot on it, and he, being having been trained by like Control Data and IBM, he grabbed off the shelf the book that came with it for BASIC. And he said, if you want to do something with the computer, here it is. And it was this thick. So I was 10 years old, and that was my journey to becoming a self-taught programmer. Microsoft was dominant then at home. Apple was dominant too, and Commodore 64. But as those began to fade, everybody was getting essentially Windows 3.1 PCs, and then of course Windows 95 was a phenomenon. If people who are younger or maybe weren't even, I recognize that many of my colleagues weren't around then. People lined up to go buy Windows 95 at Fry's, which no longer exists. Micro Center.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
those lines
Micro
into
Center
the
is pretty
Micro Center is still
relevant
big
though.
in Tustin.
Yeah,
I know, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But Fry's no longer exists, and that's where I
yeah,
went to
yeah.
buy my copy of Windows 95. So I was just the right age to be able to afford going along with the ride of Microsoft's desktop in every home, which became a desktop or two plus a work laptop in every home. Like it was just, that's where it was.
So I was just about to ask you this,
Yeah.
right? So um, when I think back to the last decade, and this is more personal to me, right? My computer journey was more with Mac, right? I grew up knowing about Windows 95, and I was using it around college. But also around college, the first iPod came out, and then I became sort of a fan of Steve Jobs
Oh,
and all
yeah.
the Macs that were relaunching,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
you know,
It was a rebirth.
it was a
Yeah.
rebirth, yeah. And then I preferred using Mac
Hmm.
at my college, and I even became sort of like the domain expert for Mac because everybody knew Windows.
Hmm.
And I started my web development career using like Mac stations and Linux stations. So for me, like that was like the thing. I that was the thing that I got really good with, and I knew that before a lot of people, and that was how I was able to get web dev jobs
Hmm.
in the beginning.
Yep.
Um, and so for the last decade, when I look back, it's largely been Mac Linux, right? And whenever I get a computer at work, they always give me a MacBook, and I'm like, sure,
Yeah.
this is
Right.
what I know like really, really well.
Yep.
But whenever I pick up a Windows laptop, and I actually have this like as my personal challenge right now, I'm like, okay, I know I can do a lot of stuff on Windows. I'm actually recording this video on a Windows laptop, and I'm like, just making sure that everything is, working solidly. But some paranoia still exists in me because I'm like, if I was on Mac, it might be easier.
Okay.
But the fact that I'm doing it on Windows again, right? And this is where I'm going to bring the question to you is like the fact that I'm doing it on Windows again, I feel like this is probably the time where Windows is kind of a little bit more dominant. You see that now with like ChatGPT and OpenAI and like the Microsoft and Azure kind of connection. So I was going to ask you, right, like, is this the right time to be learning .NET? Like especially for people who grew up with Mac or grew up, like more not using Windows 95 and all that stuff.
Yeah. People ask this question all the time. Um, .NET is a platform that it's been around since around 2002 was its official launch, and back then it was called the .NET framework. But when I say that, you know how comics and movies sometimes retcon, and that the term we use to mean like, yeah, we have some media in the past, and we're going to kind of say that that's what that storyline meant, even though that's probably not what we meant at the time. And so
Yeah.
so I've lived the history of .NET. I am fortunate enough. You mentioned being a Microsoft MVP, and I think a lot of people don't know what that means. Number one, it means I don't work for Microsoft. That's a key
Hmm.
component of it. A Microsoft MVP is a community expert that Microsoft recognizes, and so I'm honored that Microsoft has recognized me now for 10 years as someone who tries to assist in the community to help to educate and become an expert that can be valuable to others, both at my own job but also outside of it. And that's what this plaque, let's see, right here is. And it's got 10 rings on it
Okay.
to just show that I've been doing this
Okay.
10 years. It's not, you don't, it's not a paid thing. It's 100% volunteer. And again, you are recognized. You don't ask for it. I want to be careful to, and again, you're not an employee. Um,
Okay. Can we see a focus of that
Oh
just real
gosh,
quick if you
I
guys?
can
Yeah.
I can go get
Like
it.
maybe I kind of only see a
Yeah.
part of it. Maybe just like bring it into focus a little bit.
So this is what Microsoft has given me, and each year
Wow.
there is a ring, and I'm actually about to get a 10-year ring. It should be showing up in the
That's
mail,
amazing.
and I am proud of it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah, yeah.
it's it's been a fun journey. It says, we recognize and value your exceptional contributions. Every year you get a letter from the CEO. So it used to be Steve Ballmer, and then it was Satya Nadella. And then what you can do is you can have them send it to whoever you want. So I would always send it to my workplace. And
That's a good
yeah,
move.
and listen, depending on, and
Yeah.
boy, this would be an interesting. Some workplaces celebrated it, and others just kind of shrugged. It just depends on how well did the people there know what that meant. And
Mm-hmm.
so, why is this important? Well, I was at, if you have you heard of the Microsoft Build conference? It was just last week, I think. Maybe it was a week before. It is Microsoft's
Mm.
version of Google I/O or Apple's, is it WWDC is what it's called?
Developer
Yeah,
conference, WWDC.
it's
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
version of it. It used to be called
Okay.
PDC, the Professional Developers Conference. In 2000, my company sent me to it. In fact, they sent the entire developer department to it. And this wasn't known, it wasn't planned. They did a pretty good job of keeping it under wraps. It was a different time. The internet age was clearly here at 2000, but it wasn't today. The social media age where leaks abound and nothing's a secret. I was in the audience when Microsoft announced .NET and they announced C Sharp to the world. And I watched an audience mainly of VB or C++ developers. You were one or the other at that time. The VB
Okay.
developers were Microsoft's army. It was the number one
Hmm.
enterprise
I
programming
remember
language in the
VB.
world.
Yeah.
And I think Microsoft understood the challenge. They were about to tell them without telling them, we're going a different way. And how do we convince you to come along and not get angry? And to cut to the chase, we could have whole podcasts on my personal observation there. They succeeded because there was a moment that I remember them getting a standing ovation. And my friend, who, again, at the time, I am 26 years old. I have some colleagues who are mentors of mine who are 10, 15 years on me. They've got a ton of experience. And one of them turns to me and says, so they've just convinced the VB developers that this is the right thing. Microsoft has won. Like, he understood the context of what had just happened. And I remembered him saying
Mm-hmm.
that because if he hadn't have said it, I wouldn't have caught it.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine I'm in the audience when they give us CDs that we can take upstairs and put on laptops and start using C Sharp that night. We were excited.
Wow.
We were that night
Yeah.
sitting there like, and it was very Java like. Java
Yeah.
was beginning to
Yeah.
get traction as the write once, run everywhere possibility. It didn't turn out that way, but enterprise was thinking this could be it. And enterprise is desperate for that. They want that so bad. So here comes Microsoft saying, we can come to the rescue and we can make value of your VB developers, your army of VB developers. Don't worry, we've got you, enterprise. We've got you. And I think that saved them in terms of a developer tools pathway, right?
You mentioned Microsoft Build and WWDC is coming up, as well as Google I/O already did their thing. But I feel like, again, right, like 10 years ago, for me, the defining moment that kind of like defined like where I would start my career was, Steve Jobs
Mm-hmm.
showing the iPhone, showing how to like build mobile apps.
Mm-hmm.
And I started in that world, right? Like Phone Gap. This was in another video I talked about where, it was jQuery on the front end or, a Phone Gap app or mobile jQuery,
Yeah.
or just
Oh, yeah.
more responsive
Yep.
websites that worked with the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have like AI and the AI industry, and so I spent some time actually kind of like watching a video with Sundar Pichai. I think it was on The Verge, and he was just kind of saying that the way AI is now, it's going to be very much like people are always asking like, is this going to replace the web? And so like that affects me, right? Because I have been working on the web for a long
Hmm.
time. And so when a lot of people say software engineering is over for web developers, well, Sundar Pichai was saying it's not. Like web is actually going to be even more important
Okay.
in the future, 5 years, 10 years down the line.
Yeah.
And really, it's about like even if you're in a UI based role, which is what I've been doing, you're still going to find a lot of value with like using AI. So for me, I guess like coming back to you and circling back with like our conversation here, right? Like this is like sort of another defining moment, right? Where AI is going to help programmers become even more, successful at their job. It's going to lower the bar for a lot of ideas and make it easier to create stuff. On the Microsoft, MVP side and all this stuff, I know again, like you said, you're not working at Microsoft, but like
Hmm.
being an enthusiast with Microsoft technologies like Azure, .NET, and all this, do you see any developments there that are exciting? Especially given the integration with Microsoft and
Oh
OpenAI.
yeah. I mean, look, the last build 2 weeks ago and the build before was AI, 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 and this time they explored a concept that's called the agentic web. That, and when I
Yes.
say this, I say it, I do sound a little naive because hey, this is not the first time a tidal wave has hit me in the midst of my career, and I've had to go, okay, what's happening? Do I need to grab on? Is this the thing that I need to grab onto because the other thing, maybe I won't have a job? And we fear that a lot as developers. If you're fearing that
Yeah.
as a younger person, don't think that's uncommon. That's normal, even when you're older.
It'll never go
It
away,
doesn't go away.
unfortunately.
The thought that you need to keep learning doesn't end, but we can manage that. So when I'm not going to be able to pin an exact date on it, but I do remember when ChatGPT sort of kind of hit the mainstream. I think it was on the nightly news, and so like many people, I'm sure you opened it up and started chatting with it. And one of the first things I did is I said, well, I'm going to ask it if it can write me a C# sample. It may not have been the first thing I did, but I did it pretty early. And in fact, we did it on our show, on the Dev Talk Show. We did it live. We said, can you, I don't know if you're aware of a very common graphics demo is a spinning cube with the sides are all different colors. And really, it's just a great way if you're a graphics programmer to just quickly build a world space, have a camera pointed at a cube with 6 vertices that are all colored different colors. And so that makes it shade across the cube. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, that's fine. And then the cube spins, and that's it. That's your first program. So I asked it to
Okay.
build that for me.
Sure.
And it got it mostly right, but the cube wasn't right. The cube was missing some back faces, and I had to, and then even better, I told it that. I told it. I said, the cube, I can see through the cube, and I think it's because you don't have the vertices correct, and so a back face is being exposed. And it said, "Oh, you're right. Let me fix that." And it was wrong. This was a few years ago, and I never got it. I never could get it to give me a working program. I fixed it myself. Now, did that make it worthless? No. I had a programming problem a little while later where I needed to encrypt some plain text with a specific algorithm and key. Now, have I done it before? Sure. Do I do it every day? No. It's the kind, and encryption is the kind of thing where now I'm going to have to go look in the docs and I'm going to have to play with it probably a whole day to get my brain back around it. So I got this crazy idea and I asked ChatGPT, and it gave me a working enough sample that I went from waste. I even didn't want to use the word waste, spending the whole day putting myself back in that mindset to having a working sample that the classes and so forth from .NET that were being used, I said, oh gosh, that's right. It's the X509 certificate 2. Well, let me just go type that into Google, and there I'm right at the reference documentation for it. Instead of me going, how do I do this again? It was an
Very nice.
hour
Yeah.
instead of 8 hours. And that made me
Right.
think, huh. Now, this was a couple years ago. I said, okay, that was helpful. But what's just happened in the last few weeks has really opened my eyes. I have been asking the question to anyone who will listen, including people at Microsoft, is it just about chat? if you've ever watched 2001, it's like Hal saying, "Is that all there is? Is there nothing more?" And I've asked over and over, why do I feel like this is just about chat and embedding chats that will go tell me what pair of boots I should buy for my upcoming camping trip if I go to the local camping store's website? And it took me seeing a few other demos and trying a few things for me to say, oh, hold on. We produce a show as well. And one of the problems with producing an hour-long show is that many viewers, if I'm watching the show, I wish I could cut to the chase of where maybe we got the thing right. Maybe we struggled for 20 minutes, and if I'm watching the show, I might want to skip the 10 minutes of debugging and get to where it works. A chapter would be wonderful. Do
Yeah.
I have to watch the hour again? And so we did a little bit of an experiment where we got the audio from the show, fed it into got a timestamp transcript, and asked, and it was still ChatGPT, asked ChatGPT, can you summarize this video, including meaningful timestamps? And I don't even think our prompt was very good. And what came out, I was almost ready to say, I think I could just go put this on YouTube and call it a day. I think it's pretty good.
You're working with a company that is enterprise, and they don't like, rebuilding the wheel every like 18
Mm-hmm.
months. It's all .NET or ASP or maybe like, something else, a mix like that might be Vue-based or Angular-based. I'm okay because I might know like Vue or I might know, Angular or React, right? But then when I come into a .NET framework, like there's not a lot of literature as much as like there is for React or Node.js. So maybe like describe what that might feel like to a newbie. Like
Yeah.
what would they need to get familiar with,
Yeah.
especially in the first few weeks, and can AI help?
That's a great question on the second half. And here's where I'm a little deficient because since I have the years of expertise, I'm not rushing to AI as much as other people might. I'm going to make some predictions. If you walked into a shop today that was .NET based and they made some bets, their front end, they might have an ASP.NET MVC project, and yet they've adopted a lot of JavaScript in it, which is weird because ASP.NET MVC was very much a server-side framework, like a Ruby. Python used to have a very famous one, and it's not Flask, and it's unfortunate now.
Django.
Is Django? I think I
Is it
might be
Django?
thinking of Django,
Oh,
where everything is server side. And even those terms server side and client side, I try very hard today, knowing that younger folks in the 20, I don't know, I want to say maybe 2006 to maybe around 2015, that was common terminology. Is your framework server side or is it client side? I
yes,
feel
I
like
remember.
that's faded a little, so I often feel the need to explain a little bit. Server side means that like the request comes to the web server and there's processing happening on the web server. The MVC code is really a template that runs some code, maybe calls a database, this is the common thing, and then fills in an HTML template, renders that, and that's the response. Where a
Right.
SPA says, okay, you already delivered to me a bunch of HTML and JavaScript. That JavaScript running on your browser is calling APIs, getting answers, and filling in. It's all happening client side. So the
Right.
fact that ASP.NET MVC, which was probably adopted by a lot of businesses in the 2010s through 2015, 2020 timeframe, then they found, uh-oh, we got to do things client side too. So there's jQuery sitting in there. There
Okay.
might even be Knockout sitting in there. And I'm bringing up old
Hmm.
frameworks on purpose because here you might
Yeah.
be coming out of school, working with Vue, Angular, whatever, and then going like, oh my gosh,
Hard
what did I
stuff.
just
Yeah.
step into?
Yeah, this is like so
Wow,
old, right?
yeah. I
Actually,
hate Microsoft.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
This is a good answer, by the way.
It's
I
just the
honestly kind of feel
truth.
like,
It's just the truth,
yeah,
right? I'm not here to sugarcoat it. It's what you might
yeah,
run into. But
yeah.
you might also run
The
into an org that
non-fun
says, well,
stuff.
what we
Yeah.
did is we used Angular in our MVC, so the pages are Angular, but We use the Razor syntax to make the server side calls, and I'll admit it's a path that if I ever went down it, which I don't think I did, I actually was one person, even when this was happening, who said, I feel like you should pick one. The mixed bag is hard to maintain, but it might be what you find at your job.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's actually
Yeah.
fair because that, yeah, that is exactly what, a newcomer or even a mid-level developer, like if you're out there in 2025 and you're looking for work, you're gonna get spaghetti code. I keep forgetting this,
Yeah.
but you're just gonna get like a mix of all kinds of stuff that have been happening over the last decade, 2 decades. I would say a decade is probably more fair. And then you're also going to be like AI,
Hmm.
there's all this shiny stuff I want to
Yeah, I know.
do,
I know.
but like there's that's the difference between having a job
Yes.
and having fun.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
Like if you want the money aspect, you're going to make more money cleaning spaghetti code.
Oh, yes.
And I would say that that's literally my role too. Like I spend a lot of time cleaning and fixing code that has been legacy for so long and trying to modernize it,
Sure.
right? And so like I think on the other side, you have all this modern stuff coming out, and you have companies like OpenAI and ChatGPT and all this stuff like saying use our
Hmm.
tools. It's so much better than whatever you're doing. But like you said, there's a lot of this
Hmm.
resistance, the enterprise resistance, because they don't want to, like blow their whole budget again on like buying new software that could potentially like change in 18 months, right? Because let's be honest too, right? Like that's one other thing about AI that's kind of scary is that the technology changes
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
fast. And in the corporate world, that's actually kind of like the thing they
Right.
hate the
You
most.
want a stable platform.
They they want a stable
Stability
platform.
makes money. And listen, this comes with wisdom. When I was a kid, why not? Why aren't we doing the hottest new thing? And after you've been around this long enough, you understand that the stable platforms you've worked on, if you've had the luxury of working on a very stable project, that makes money, and that means you have a job. It's just
Yes.
that simple.
100%.
I've been part of layoffs. I've been part of companies that shut down. You mentioned the iPod. The iPod is bittersweet for
Yeah.
me. Look, I think the iPod is
Oh
great.
no.
I think Steve Jobs cracked that code, and it's what Steve Jobs always did. And we miss his value. We lost him too early. And look, I'm saying that as somebody who was on the other side, right? Apple was doing something, and I'm going like, well, good for Apple, but how's it going to benefit me? When he held up that iPod, I was working at a company in Carlsbad, California. Uh, my fondest memory, frankly, in my career, called Digital on Demand. And what we were doing is we were trying to digitize the music industry. Does that sound like something that a lot of people were trying to do then? And we
Yeah,
had some
it
really
does.
fun stuff we were doing. I was part of a project called Disneyland Forever, which I could spend a 2 hour podcast. It was my dream project, my dream. I can still say to this day that when people ask me what's the greatest project you ever worked on, like personally, I have to go back to when I was in my 20s. It was a dream. I mean, you can see Mickey Mouse in the background. I'm from Anaheim, California. What do you think? I'm gonna love Disneyland, right?
Of course. I love Disney
We
too.
were trying to digitize music. We were trying to get the music from. We had platforms ready to digitize music for you. I know this is going to sound funny, on custom CDs that could be shipped to you, could be made for you right inside Targets, or our dream. We didn't actually was Targets or something. We had listening stations at Barnes and Nobles. Some people might remember these, where you grabbed a CD off the rack, scanned it, and then you could listen to previews. That was that company.
I
I
remember.
worked there.
Yeah. Okay.
When Steve Jobs held that up, there were a lot of us who looked at each other and said, "We're done." Now that company went on another 5, 8 years because companies don't just die instantly. But we knew that he had beaten us to the very punch that we wanted. But the music companies trusted Apple with the music. They were only. I might be. I don't think I'm spilling anything that's contractual at this point. 25 years later, the music companies didn't trust these other firms promising them they would protect the music. So we got a lot of indie music. We weren't going to get the Beatles. We weren't going to get, you know. And so when he got all that, and he got it at a price point for 99 cents, which they would not let us do. Oh, they wanted 4.99 a song, which we would tell them like that's not sustainable. There's no way. When he got all that, we're like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's it.
that's
But
that is
it was
bittersweet.
fun to at
Yeah.
least, you know what was, so you know, I had a mentor from there, and going back to mentorship, I think is the key. You're going to hear me talk about this a lot. I had a mentor from there who once told me years later, we learn more from failure than success. And I hang on to that because he said, look, the digital on demand failure, think about how much you grew. What did you learn from it? What were the right decisions we made as a company? What were the right decisions you made for the company? And then what were the wrong
Yeah.
ones?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of like one piece of thing advice I could say for that aspect is that, the main thing with uh, work, right? Like whoever you are listening to this is that um, you're going to be doing something. You're going to be working on some project or something that seems really important right now. And, there's going to be a moment where you'll be like, oh, I wonder if I still should be doing this or is this thing going away or whatever. There's going to be like setbacks. There's going to be all kinds of failures. But like you have to kind of look at it in a different lens, right? And I think like this is kind of like one lesson that I've seen somewhere many times. And I always internalize it too is that, your job is different from your career, right? Your job is what you're doing now, whatever you're like learning or building or doing at the moment, and that seems important, but you also want to build your career
Mm-hmm.
too. Like it's equally important, or it's probably more important, essentially, that you're kind of continuously trying to grow. Um, and just to be transparent with you, right? Like I'm not the best at YouTube or all of this stuff,
Yeah.
live podcasting and all this stuff. But like I realize like part of me needs to grow this way. A part of me needs to like be just more involved in these different tools because it's good for my
Yeah.
career. The more I
Yep.
can practice public speaking or just talking in general and having fun, I feel like that's going to help me. The more I can code in public, this is like something I hear a lot. Um, the more confident I'm going to be. Like these are all things you can do to improve your career, right? And then if you improve your career, like you don't have to worry so much about job, right? If a job loss happens, which it will,
Yeah.
it's happened
Yep.
to me too. If you've been taking care of your career on the side, you're going to be way better off than the people who only focus on their
Mm-hmm.
job, right? Like they
Yeah.
only focus on like this little subset of like
Yeah.
knowledge. So network, like that's what Hack Buddy is
Yes.
about, right?
Right.
Like and even your group too,
Yep.
right? Like and um the connection we have together, like that is what the thing that is bringing us together like is what is going to save our careers or make us feel
Yeah.
better because yeah, tomorrow I might not have a job because AI took it
Sure.
for web development, but if I have been working on my career and learning other
Yeah.
technologies, including enterprise stuff, right? This is gold.
Yeah.
I'm gonna still have work to
Right.
do, you know?
Breaking down that advice for somebody younger, you know, I wish somebody could have broken it down for me. Although, you know, people did. I had mentors. That's the thing I'm most happy for, is I can actually name mentors. Like I'm not necessarily going to do it, but I can think of specific people that I take inspiration from when I was in my 20s that I try to emulate today. So when we talk about building your career, it can be taken the wrong way. If you're watching this and maybe you're saying, what does that mean, Chris? It doesn't mean being selfish. It doesn't mean that you're building your career because you're storing up things for yourself. In fact, you actually want to try and do the opposite at jobs. You want to be in a place where you're not hoarding some specific knowledge. Or I know this sounds almost like, is it job security? It's like, well, no,
Hmm. Hmm.
actually. You want to put your manager and your company in a position to not need the work you're doing so that you can go solve other problems. I know that can sound strange, but it turns out if you take that attitude also to what you're doing, VJ, and building your we talked about this in the 90s too, building your developer brand, it's really going to help you. And building the developer brand changes. So how did I build it in the 2000s? I gave talks at local user groups. That helped me
Hmm.
be prepared for when I needed a job to have a network of people who said, "Oh, you're out of work? Well, you clearly must be the expert on something related to authentication in websites because you did a talk on it. We need to hire you." So that was building the brand then. In the let me think, when did I do this interview? I'm not going to name the place, but I think it was 2010. So this that sets the context for where we were in history of the web. YouTube's there, but it's new. Blogs, I think, are pretty big. I put some time into a project where I took a technology called Signal R, which uses WebSockets to do bidirectional communication, and I
Right.
built this little board game sample where you and I could move pieces on a board and it would happen in real time. And then I wanted it to be cool. I wanted it to be scriptable. So you could write Python scripts that would execute right in the website, and you could basically some of the objects available to you were the tokens on the board. So you could detect if you were next to a token or did you land on one. You could start to implement. I mean, it was very basic, but the point was I put all this into a sample, and I also made the sample run. It was event driven. So different parts of components, the map published events. It said, "Oh, a token is moved," and then something else picked up, "Oh, I'd better tell the other players." So I put this on GitHub. I didn't put it on there for anyone. It was for me. I did actually do a talk on it. It was a talk I did at a Philly.net user group. I went to go apply for a job. At the job, they had my name, and during the interview, one of the lead developers said to me, "Hey, I went to your GitHub." My heart sunk at that moment. I mean, I immediately, not because the only thing you can help say is, "Oh my God." I don't care how good
Right.
and curated your GitHub is, especially back in 2010, they didn't have as many of the features now to put a page and to organize it. You just can't help but think like, "What did I do? What garbage
Yeah.
did?" And he said,
Yeah. What are they seeing? Yeah. Like, oh my
"Yeah."
gosh, my
He said, "I
code.
looked at your Signal
Yeah.
R sample." He said, "I was going to come in here and have you do a coding exercise that was about the strategy pattern, and that sample is the strategy pattern, and you even did like this pub sub using a JavaScript
Nice.
library.
Nice.
So I don't even see a need to do that." And I realized
Nice.
at that
Yeah.
moment, I said, I didn't even realize I was building my brand because who knew that someone was. And that's what you're doing on YouTube and what I'm doing on YouTube. And what I do
Exactly.
suggest you watching figure out how to do is find ways to help, assist. What are you learning? Put it out there. You never know, especially in the age of remote work. I've worked for companies based in Atlanta and Utah. That would have never happened 20 years ago. Um, I now currently work for a
That's true too.
company based in Philadelphia, but I know that I can do remote work, and there are many places open to it. You don't know who's going to come across your video, and when you're applying, they say, "Oh, look, he's the expert in the technology we need help in."
Very good. Okay, so let's kind of
Yeah,
wind down a little bit too, just to kind of finish the thought, because I know like we can talk about a lot of different
yeah,
things. So I guess like for the final thoughts here right now, um, number one, let me just kind of go back a step. You mentioned coding, and you had like a project that you did that delighted the interviewer. I would like a link to that if you have a video also to go along with that that we would like to share. We can put that as a card for this YouTube video. And then number two, maybe like it would be great to have you just like code with us.
yeah,
I feel like maybe like an intro to some of the technologies we mentioned today. I feel like your work with .NET, C Sharp, maybe even just like something getting comfortable with Windows. I feel like that's, really helpful for a lot of people who, might have used Windows like 10 years ago or whatever. They primarily work on Mac. I'm giving
yeah,
myself away
yeah.
here. Just for like, people who want to like kind of get back into it and start coding and feeling, I think like the point would be like people who want to feel empowered on Windows too, like the way they do with Mac, and be able to kind of fluently use things like Power Tools, PowerShell, command lines, VS Code, .NET, all the different IDEs, and then maybe even like you could go into like Azure
Hmm.
and how a lot of the cloud services are like kind of changing the way you need to use technology. Like you may not even need like powerful laptops because you can just do everything in the cloud, right? So I feel like a lot of this was stuff I was hearing about like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, and it was great back then too. But then, I think some of the hype around it kind of died down because other technologies came out. But it's still good to kind of to revisit. I feel like, especially in 2025, even more, it's more important to revisit. So,
Yeah.
what? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, and I have spent, I can't believe it's been about 20 years now teaching other developers, but I also have a passion for, I also every year I volunteer for a hackathon for middle school and high school students. And it's the idea is for them to build their first website as a team. So we select, and I'm part of the education curriculum. So we think like, what is the curriculum going to be? We're trying to, in a weekend, we want them to build their first
Yes.
website. So thinking about what does that look like for a student, and then honestly it's a lot of what can we do on laptops and in browsers, because students now all have Chromebooks for the most part, which was not something we had about 10 years ago where we were begging, borrowing for them to have devices. Now their schools are giving them Chromebooks. So
That's so
so
true.
while I do teach professional developers in the .NET space, when I talk to them, I'm talking to people. We're in a track here where we all kinds of context and history, but I also appreciate getting a chance to talk to the new developer, our next generation, and another passion of mine has been career changing adults, because I'm a self taught developer. I am not. We could have a whole show on whether I recommend being one. There are definite pros and cons, and sometimes the cons hurt. And I say, man, I wish I had an engineering degree. Just being honest. But I respect that there have been many people who are now in their 30s and maybe even 40s and saying like, but I want to make the career change, and I kind of think I can do this. I want to help them too. So I think
Yeah.
your space seems to be a space that could be really valuable there, and I love the idea of everything you just said. Even though to me I think, wow, I wouldn't take some of those topics to Philly.net because I don't want to use this term because they're basic. The price of admission was you already knew that stuff. Well, what about someone who
Yes.
doesn't know it? I want them to
Yeah.
come too.
Yeah.
So
Yes. And I know your dog is probably like,
he
"Hey,
gets
help me
restless.
out here."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like finally, on the final thoughts here, and we can make dog happy. Uh, I think like this kind of goes back to something my kid was saying to me like the other day. She was like saying to me like you're always talking to people who are super advanced or to people who are like, doing computer stuff, but like, I feel like as a kid, I don't even really know how to do typing,
Oh
like
gosh, yeah.
where's the program to help me to learn how to type? You always talk about like, oh, in your day you had a typing program or some, cool program on Apple, and now I have to kind of search around for it on like a weird website on Google or something like that,
Yeah.
Um, I I kind of feel like yeah, the next generation is out there kind of looking for, help and understanding all these tools. And you are right, like people use Chromebooks, they use their phone, they use, tablets. Um, so I feel like right now maybe there should be, some direction. And I even feel like for a while, Apple was sort of like the leader in education, but they kind of stopped. And like now it's kind of like you said, Chrome and then maybe Microsoft. So it would be a good time, right? Like I think like the ultimate summary here is like that, I think like for young people watching, I feel like they also want to know like how to get started, how to become, the next developer. Like you
Hmm.
said, you were so excited by the
Yeah.
Commodore when you were 10 years
Sure.
old.
Sure.
What is that
Yeah.
now? And how do we like foster the development of children,
Yep.
in the future?
Yep. And there are, so one thing, and so on the Dev Talk Show, which is, it's a YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show. very often, and we struggle with this a little bit, the topics are laser focused on a professional dev with experience. But every once in a while, we'll do a show about web development in your browser. I like to do it once a year. And we basically concentrate on, we're going to use nothing but the browser. I want to show you tools that not only could you build a web page, you can learn things. I like CodePen for some learning. Use various tools like whether it's Code Sandbox, GitHub Codespaces, Replit, StackBlitz, I think is another one. I'm always trying to keep up with what are the online IDEs, and they come faster than I can keep up with them. But I'm looking for that pathway so somebody can watch and say, so you do happen to have a Chromebook, a low cost price of entry, or maybe you just have another laptop, or maybe it's older and you're saying, I'm just afraid I can't run all these modern things. I don't have the money to buy X and Y. I'm looking for how you start. I want to start with free. I want you to be able to build your first website, publish it, and it actually is on the web and it works, and it didn't cost you a dime. Now, if it becomes your passion, look, I never would ask somebody to say, spend your hard-earned dollars. But if it becomes your passion, you might find that it's natural to say, I'm going to go get a better laptop, or I'm going to pay for a subscription to X site, because even though it is $10 a month, well, heck, Netflix costs me more. And it all works on my Chromebook, so I'm still in this low-cost investment, and I'm becoming a developer.
Yes.
I think there's a YouTube channel there, frankly. Code on a Chromebook or something like that,
Yeah, and kids are the ones watching YouTube a lot, right? Like, we just saw a statistic that Mr. Beast, like, I think more than 40% of his audience is children.
Yeah.
So, just he's a billionaire for that reason. Ultimately too, right? Like there's a lot of good directions we can go for future talks. I feel like this was such a great introductory talk to meeting you and just kind of getting some background, and just there's a lot of different things that I think came out of this conversation that are super useful. I'm gonna probably end up revisiting it and just listening to it again because I feel like it's so good for career. With that said, I just want to give you the opportunity at this moment, pretty much just to plug and let us know how do we continue to follow you and what are you up to next, and maybe what's your favorite ice cream?
Yeah. Well, so the first one's easy. I think I almost always head for chocolate chip cookie dough, but
Nice.
if there's peanut butter swirled in it, then I'm sold. But so that was the easy one. So right now, the big project is the channel, the Dev Talk Show, youtube.com/the Dev Talk Show. I used to have some other places you could find me. I still have a Twitter account. It's my gamer tag. So Chris Gomez is a common name. We could have a whole other podcast about how I battled with other Chris Gomez's for C Gomez, Chris Gomez, and other handles on the various socials. So Space Shot is my Xbox Live gamer tag, and I've used that. But I would say the Dev Talk Show is my #1 spot. I used to have a website up at chrisgomez.com. It is down right now as I'm trying to reimagine it into a blog/media portal. But, I have a career, have a family like you do.
Yeah. Like our own personal websites,
it's hard.
I empathize with you. Like it's always hard to just maintain it. Like that's the one thing. Everyone comes to our website and they go, "Why isn't it updated? You updated in 2015." And you're supposed to be like this top-notch developer.
Right.
Well, sorry, all my brain power.
Exactly. If only I knew a software developer to work on my own website, and I am a career web developer, right? Well, a lot of different things, but I say that all the time. So, those are the kinds of things that are fun to work on too, is we could work on those kinds of projects with people, is building your own site and how would you link out to things and exploring what the future web. I'm hearing about the agentic web. We'll learn what it is together.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we will. Upcoming episode. Well, I guess your dog is calling you and saying, take me out for a walk. So I say thank you again for doing this show with me. And I appreciate it. Thank you again for just being a friend, Discord friend and all that. And, I look forward to just making more content with you and just engaging with you in Discord or public.
This was great. I'm glad we got to have this chat, and I'm sure we'll do it again. So have a great night.
Okay, you too. Thank you so much, Chris. I'll talk to you later. Have a good night. Bye.